How you doing? I'm Michael Bell, the voice of Duke.
Hi, this is Adrienne Palicki, Lady J from G.I. Joe.
Hey there, it's Rachel Nichols, aka Scarlet.
And if you're listening,
And you're listening to
And you are listening to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe with Greg and Jaren.
Yo, Joe!
Got my G.I. Joes, got my comic books, watching cartoon episodes. Watch me go and box, dead stop, Jaren on his toes. Watch me go and lock a whole new world you never know. On my freaking block, on my block, anything Joe's. Roll my badger into work today. Yes, sir, no, sir. I can't call this work today. I'm too clutch. Ain't no pun intended. Call me sir today. Check the prices out. My collection feeling bird today. Anything Joe. 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 Joe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Anything Joe's, a collaborative journey through the world of G.I. Joe. My name is Greg Engel,
And I'm Jaren Decker.
and we'll be your host today. Man, it's an exciting time to be a G.I. Joe fan. We've got two of the biggest G.I. Joe events of 2024 happening right now simultaneously. The Dragonfly, the HasLab project, has just started to arrive in most people's homes, and we have a video on that coming up soon. But today what we wanted to talk about is Image Skybound's brand new release of the new G.I. Joe title, G.I. Joe #1. If you've been following the Energon Universe at all, you know they've been building to this for a bit. We've known that it's been coming for quite a while, but they started with 4 short, like mini series, focusing on each like 4 focal characters. They did a Cobra Commander, they did a Duke, they did a Destro, they did a Scarlet, and those stories kind of like set the groundwork for the full regular G.I. Joe book, so you knew who was going to be on the team. Like, you got a little kind of behind the scenes info, so you could just hit the ground running with this book, which is basically what they did. So we're going to take a look at it and give our thoughts on it, and we'll, if you haven't read any of the miniseries before, we'll try to fill you in on all the new stuff that's going on in this G.I. Joe universe. Before we get into the meat of the story, I thought we'd take a minute and talk about covers. There are an unfathomable amount of covers for this book, far more than we could cover on this show, but I thought I would show you guys the covers that I decided to pick up personally, because I have them here. First book is the regular cover. This is the cover that you'll basically see when we actually start looking at it. This is the cover that's behind every other cover, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously I got that one. I think I've got 15 covers total, if that tells you how invested I am in this event. There's a foil of that exact same cover. I got
great.
that because I do love a good
Fantastic.
foil. I don't know the names of every artist off the top of my head, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. This Baroness cover with the orange background, really like this. I think this is another standard cover. Like, they did, like, I think maybe up to 5 just regular, order as many as you want. They're not like exclusive variants. This is a David Nakayama Baroness cover, which I like a lot. One of my favorite things about these variant covers is that they tapped a lot of like new comic book. These are like the heavy hitters in the comic book world right now. If you're not collecting regular comic books,
Yeah.
David Nakayama is a huge cover artist name. Let's see. I think this says Booth. Sorry. It's a Tomax and Zaymont versus CoverGirl cover, which
That's pretty cool.
Yes, I also think is
I love
very
all
good.
the Crimson Guard that are like falling down. That was pretty cool little background piece.
This is the 1 in 50. It's a His Tank blueprint book. Quite a bit different than all the others. Like, it's not as action packed. It's a little bit more like behind the scenes. I think it's
But
pretty
if
cool.
they want to keep giving us those, that would be dope.
Yeah, I wonder how many variants we're going to be looking at going forward, knowing what they've done with all the others. This is a David Finch cover. It's got all the Cobra baddies on it. I like this cover a lot. I do love David Finch. Did a lot of great Batman art. Really like how Cobra Commander looks in this.
Is that supposed to be Baroness on the front?
No,
blonde?
we'll get into that in a minute. That's
okay.
That's our Baroness replacement, because the Baroness is a hero in this one. This is Lee. I think it's pronounced. Sorry, Lee Brahimo. I might be mispronouncing that, but I know that's the guy's name. This is a great kind of like Alex Ross, painted cover vibe. You can see Duke's reflection in Cobra Commander's mask as he's reaching out for him or pushing him away or whatever. That's another really good cover. don't know who this cover artist is, it's kind of like a bleak, yellowish, brownish cover with them all kind of striking an action pose. So that's an okay cover. It doesn't do a whole lot for me compared to some of the others.
I feel like that's the OG-13 homage cover. Like,
Yeah,
people that
I mean,
like the green military tones, that's their cover.
Yeah, kind of striking that first issue pose.
Yeah.
This is a Jenny Frisson cover. It has, the name of this character is Chameleon, Jaren, and we'll get into why that's her name in a little bit. Jenny Frisson, another big, very popular, has done a lot of DC covers. She draws Poison Ivy a lot and Harley Quinn. They made a foil of that, and I got it too.
Nice.
I met Jenny Frisson. She was very nice. I hope I get a chance to get those signed at a later date. And almost at the end, I got 2 blanks. They made a blank that has the G.I. Joe logo in the corner and one that has a Cobra logo in the corner.
That's cool.
I picked up one of each in case I get a chance to get a sketch cover in the near future. And then lastly, this was one that I reported on Twitter and Blue Sky. It's I think this gentleman's name is Tom Waite. He did an exclusive cover for a comic book seller on Whatnot, and they were selling it there. And I liked it so much I got it right away. I'm a big fan of G.I. Joe covers that are kind of non-traditional art, and this obviously qualifies. It's almost like Saturday comic strip cartoony.
Yeah.
And that was enough to pique my interest. And also, because I was watching it live on Whatnot, the gentleman that did the art was there and showed the preview of that exact variant for number 2, which I'll show now, so you guys get a look at it in advance also. Maybe I'm not supposed to show that, but they didn't tell me not to, so sorry,
You didn't
guys.
sign no papers.
I'm a newsman at heart, so here it is. The only cover that I have purchased that isn't here, which I'll also show, is the Rain Gonzalez cover, which is very well known, especially in Marvel, for doing these very rainbow, cutesy, chibi art. And this one with the Baroness is basically the same. Again, very outside the norm for G.I. Joe art, and that always catches my eye and pulls me in. Plus, my daughter will love this cover, so. So those are the 15 covers of G.I. Joe #1 that I picked up. Sure hope it was a good investment. No, if I learned anything from the IDW run, now you listeners as well, it's that those books have started to go way up in value. So I'm just going to try to get as much as I can when I can. I can't get them all. I mean, not right now for sure. So I'm just grabbing what I can get my hands on. That's at a good, I got a good deal on that bundle, so I don't feel too bad about it. All right, with the covers out of the way, we can get straight into the meat and potatoes, and that's the story itself. Let's take a look at G.I. Joe #1. G.I. Joe #1 is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Tom Riley and Jordi Belair. You can see that it has the Energon Universe branding, as long as I like the little head shot logos in the corner box there. It's very old school Marvel vibe, how they used to kind of advertise who's in the book. On this cover, we have Rock and Roll, Clutch, Duke, Cover Girl. This is our new character, Risk. There's the Baroness, and there's Stalker. I was going to say the Stalker. You can see that Duke is standing on it's got like an Autobot logo on it. This cover's been seen a lot. They've been putting it out there quite a bit. So at this point, I've looked at it enough to where I'm like, this is a good cover. It is a good cover, actually. I'd say of all the covers I've looked at, this is the one that makes the most sense to be the standard cover. And also, in addition to that, it's also a wraparound cover. So if we flip it over to the back, we can see there's some Cobra bats that are flying around. There's Tomax and Zaymot. There's Mercer, Scrap Iron, Cobra Commander, Destro, and as we have established, this is Chameleon. Pretty great cover. It really does kind of highlight all of the key characters that we've learned a lot about up to this date, and then it teases some stuff that we haven't seen yet as well, some characters that haven't been introduced. Cobra Commander's got his little Energon crystals in his hand, and
I like that Cobra Commander suit. The red stripe, I dig.
Yeah, this outfit is a very interesting redesign for Cobra Commander. It almost has kind of like a old Civil War era vibe to it. Maybe it's just the way which I think works for Cobra Commander in a very real way. Yeah, they've made some very subtle changes to almost everybody's outfit. Tomax and Zaymot's got a lot more red on their overall outfit, and Destro's got kind of like a cybernetic arm piece here. Even Mercer's outfit's like a modified regular Viper design, which I love a lot.
And
A
he's
lot of these
huge.
characters are, yeah.
He's jacked. I need a Mercer figure now.
I'd say we're not far off. I'd say that this will be a big enough hit that the characters we see here are probably already in development, knowing how long it takes them to get the characters out. I would not be surprised.
Give me
if
another
we see-
Duke as well. You know, I like that Duke as well. Just come on, give me another.
They should do a Energon Universe branding, just like a Night Force, and then they would make all the characters in this line, and the characters that don't quite fit. I mean, like, here's a chance to do another Duke repaint, and another CoverGirl repaint, and another Stalker repaint to make them. You know, it would be easy money. You'd only have to do some work
A
on
regular release clutch without a vamp, so I can replace the one with a jank arm that I have. Not that I hold any grudges. I got
All right,
an extra, whatever dreadnought out of it.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the Energon universe right now. Story opens up and Duke is given a speech to the team about how bad the odds are against them. He's having like kind of a flashback moment of them fighting bats and evading Cobra, and you know, he says, "You're the best of the best." And then big 2-page spread of them like just the big action scene to get everybody worked up. We see a big plane off in the distance. These guys have all got jetpacks strapped on, which is super cool, kind of reminiscent of the G.I. Joe animated movie opening. Here we see Clutch, Scarlet, Rock and Roll, Stalker, Duke, and Baroness all flying, you know, kicking into gear. Really great. Like, Rock and Roll's kind of got his gun up in the air, just kind of like going for it. Everybody's got, you can see a lot of personality shine through in the characters just in this opening page.
Something I was going to say just real quick is I like that even though this isn't Larry, there still is a respect for like the realistic looking weapons. Like every single gun, except for maybe CoverGirls, and that's just because I can't tell, but they look like they're modeled directly after an actual gun that I've seen, which is nice. It's nice that they're not fully just getting rid of any realism.
Yeah, I think the perfect G.I. Joe universe is always a blend of that realism with some science fiction. Like Metal Gear Solid is what I always compare it to. It's just like you're walking this very fine wire between don't make it quite too unbelievable, but push it about as far as you can, which I love. Duke yells out, "Listen up, soldiers. Here's your objective. Take out the enemy." They've got a bunch of these little like drones. They look a lot like the drones that come with Classified Firefly, actually. Are shooting through the sky, and we're kind of starting to introduce all of our characters, who I'd say most of us probably know pretty well at this point. But here's Rock and Roll with a big smile on his face, you know, blasting stuff out of the air. You get a short, like, not file card, but a short, like, bio that shows him as a surfer dude. Lists him as heavy artillery. There's Stalker doing, like, a little jetpack flip. Gunning some drones down. Same thing, I mean, with all of them. Basically, every character we're getting a little bit of a... I identified her as Scarlet. It's actually CoverGirl. That's my bad. Scarlet's off on, like, a whole other mission right now.
Would we say Rock and Roll's heavy artillery? I want to know people's opinion on that. Do we feel like that's a little off?
I mean, obviously he's listed as a heavy machine gunner. I would think that maybe just heavy artillery qualified would be more appropriate.
I guess. It just, to me, like, heavy artillery feels more like there's a guy a mile away, like, loading a howitzer, and he's going to shell your location. Like, when I think of artillery, that's what I'm thinking of.
I can agree with that. I mean, yes, heavy artillery is like long range, who has mans the thunderclap, one of the largest pieces of artillery that moves. But
Oh well. Tomato.
There's Stalker, there's CoverGirl, there's Clutch, and then, of course, we have the Baroness. So if you haven't been reading the miniseries up to this point, Baroness basically is, like, not associated with Cobra that we know of. She was captured and helps Duke kind of, like, defend this, like, their little place where they've been being held captive. And then he puts in a good word for her to recruit her on the team, which is obviously not to be expected in most G.I. Joe mythologies. That's never been done. And she's a little bit of a she carries over that that ego, that like what do you like somebody that's like very high in society, like she's like an elitist. She butts heads with the team just basically right off the bat. You see here they show her taking down a drone, like she like jumps on top of it and hits it with her knife. It says here that Baroness was, she's a war criminal you met while you were both locked up, but that they can't deny her talents. While the Baroness is taking this drone down, her backpack malfunctions, short circuits. She starts to free fall. Duke notices and goes after her, blows up. He like shoots I don't know if that's probably not a grenade, but I don't know what you call the like rocket, like an RPG maybe.
If you've played Call of Duty, you would call it a noob tube, I think.
The blue frag. He blows up these drones that get in his way so he can get to the Baroness. He grabs the back of her jetpack and manages to do a quick recovery just before they hit the ground. Baroness is not very appreciative, thus illustrating my point that she just doesn't really get along very well with the rest of the team. Even in a training situation, we almost died. Surely any real battle will be our graveyard. So now we see that the drones are not an actual threat. They're just kind of like trying to get the team in order. Rock and Roll assures them, hey, don't worry about it. These are the early days. It's going to be okay. And we see a flashback scene where Duke and Hawk are talking it out. Duke is convincing Hawk that Baroness is, a valuable member of the team, and they need it because they're outmatched, outgunned, behind in the tech. If they went up against the enemy today, we're screwed. Cut to Springfield, USA, a familiar dynamic that most G.I. Joe fans know. It's the happy town that is Cobra underneath. Destro has made an agreement from his own miniseries. Destro is a top arms dealer. Tomax and Zama are a top mercenary group. They license out the Crimson Guards to fight the wars for people. Destro makes the weapons that does the same thing, and these two people have been butting heads for a long time, much longer than the book has been going on. They have an all-out feud with each other, and at the end of that book, they reach a common alliance where they will all work together with Cobra Commander to achieve this one true goal. Here we see the results of that as Destro is overseeing the military forces that are walking around here. They are making use of the Energon that they've been fighting for. That's Cobra Commander's whole big thing is he's come to Earth with Energon, and it's changing the face of technology. And right now he's one of the only people that has it. So they're using that Energon to upgrade the firepower and destructive capabilities of all your weapons. You see Scrap Iron here working on one of his little missile launchers. They're hoping that they can optimize the Cobra bats that Destro had developed. He was hoping to make a Cobra bat that would be like this universal replacement for soldiers altogether, but just like the Cobra bats, the real Cobra bats that we know, they can't distinguish friend from foe, and so they're hoping that the Energon upgrade will allow them to make them even more deadly. Despite the fact that we've already seen on the cover that they can fly. We've seen them flying at this point. So the bats are quite a bit better than the bats we normally see in combat. Big full-page reveal of Cobra Commander. The last time we really saw Cobra Commander, we haven't seen him look like this since the very beginning. His mask is off. We're looking at him from behind. They've shown enough of his face that we already know there's kind of something up with him. He had an accident. He burnt his face. Maybe he got another eye. I'm not 100% sure. But we've seen enough remnants of his face to know, that it's disfigured for sure. And that we think he's of the same type of people as Cobra Law, I think is implied. Anyway, the last time we saw him, he was fighting off Nemesis Immortal / Enforcer. And as a last-ditch effort, he did something to his hand and transmogrified it into sort of like a robotic part, which was powered by Energon and enabled him to shoot a beam directly at Nemesis Enforcer and kind of get rid of him. In this panel, we see that that's maybe a permanent thing as he's like fine-tuning it now. You can see that the flesh and the cybernetics have kind of merged together. Big fan of that. Not really a ton of reference in existing G.I. Joe mythology, but the idea that Cobra Commander would be sort of weaponized at all times because of this, I'm a big fan of that. We see a couple of panels of Energon cubes, and there's a snake that he's been experimenting on. The classic Cobra Commander helmet, of course. Everything to date has been child's play compared to what we will need to take over the world. Destro brings in a new weapon, but this is not like the typical weapons. It's a laser gun, which is another interesting twist in an attempt to merge the cartoon G.I. Joe universe and the comic book universe. You don't see lasers and bullets working together. It's usually one or the other in the G.I. Joe world. These lasers are powered by Energon, which actually is another thing that makes a ton of sense. Energon at the pull of a trigger, and we see it blow up. Cobra Commander uses it to demolish this dummy, and he is very pleased with it.
I feel like that was a good way. That's a good way to set it up so that they're not so outmatched when they do eventually have to bump into Transformers.
True, very true.
If you give them something that is powered by Energon, which you get from the Transformers universe, then it should, in theory, give you an ability to at least somewhat combat them, as opposed to just our regular bullets, which wouldn't do much.
That makes a lot of sense, and maybe is also why they've made sure to make a point to say that they're upgrading everything with Energon, so they really will be able to stand their ground. That's a good point. Cut to Abu Dhabi, where this is the one and only scene that we have that has the new Joe in it. His name is Risk. If I've read my promo material right, he's like a former UFC fighter. He has some kind of device that he wears on his hands that's like a little shock type thing. Risk basically he shows up, he fights these guys, he takes them down. I mean, he's a very good hand-to-hand fighter. He's former UFC.
Yeah, he's like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse.
Yes. He infiltrates this meeting of these weapons dealers, and he just says flat out, "Don't sell to Mars Industries." And then at that exact moment, he gets a message on his little wristwatch that says, "Risk, changing plans, return home." And that's it. He's not on the team yet. He's just his own little dude. But I'm interested in learning more about this guy. Cut to the pit, which is looking pretty cool in this shot. Not something that I really looked very heavily on. But I like the fact that this pit, as opposed to other pits we've seen in the past, is truly... it's still under construction, I guess. But I was going to say it's truly just a big open pit. You can just jump right in it if you wanted to. But I'm realizing now that it's still supposed to still be in development. Hawk tells Duke a story to kind of motivate him and then kind of ground him in the reality of what he's doing. He says, Duke says, "I'll get it together."
I like the way that they wrote that little bit there, because it gives you the background of, okay, Hawk had a team, and then also it points to Duke being like, "I want everyone to be like me," and Hawk's like, "I tried that, it doesn't work. Let your guys be the best versions of themselves." So I thought that was a really cool way to really hammer home that point that G.I. Joe is not the best soldiers; it's the best of the best at everything. Whatever specialty there is, whoever the best at it is going to be a G.I. Joe. It doesn't matter. So I thought that was a pretty cool, for people, maybe somebody reading into G.I. Joe for the first time, oh, this isn't just going to be a bunch of army guys that say "oorah" and, do whatever. So, pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not 10 Dukes aren't going to get you anywhere if you come across a bomb that needs disposed, or a plane that only the best can pilot. You need, that's exactly what G.I. Joe is. It's the best in your specialty, basically. One thing that isn't mentioned in this book that is brought up in the Energon Universe special that had a bunch of little stories in it, kind of like a free comic book day deal, is that Hawk reveals to some of the other people, not these guys, but somebody else that's close to him, that they're building a second G.I. Joe team. And that's not referenced in this book or anywhere else that I can find, but it's implied that, it's not implied, it's said flat out. Hawk is building a secondary team. And we've seen Flint and Lady J potentially in that capacity, so I do think that's part of it. But I don't know who else. Cut to the next morning. The crew is assembled at the little, briefing desk. Looks like Clutch is making a draft for the Vamp, the multi-purpose attack vehicle. I built something like it before, but I'm updating it for G.I. Joe. Would be interested in seeing what that looks like. if it'll look like the classified vamp or something else. Another mention where Clutch talks to CoverGirl about her changing hair color, something we've also talked about a lot, that she's, blonde traditionally in the cartoon, sometimes in the comic as well. Clutch mentions, hey, CoverGirl, why the dye job? I liked you with the auburn hair. And CoverGirl fires back, that's why I changed it, which is great dialogue. Rock and Roll slaps him on the back hard enough to knock the book out of his hand and calls him out for getting busted. I love all that. That's very real dialogue, and it really paints the characters in these couple of sentences. We who know a lot about G.I. Joe understand that's exactly what Clutch's personality, you know what I mean? That's how Rock and Roll acts, and for people that are just reading for the first time, you get it like that. I'm a really big fan of this guy's writing.
I love their kind of banter back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Duke storms in. You are all aware of why Codename G.I. Joe was formed: to find and combat deadly emerging weapons technology, especially massive robots that disguise themselves as vehicles. Interestingly enough, it's funny because this is their primary goal. They don't really even know Cobra exists. Scarlet had heard the name in her individual mission, but it hasn't made its way back home yet to the point to where they should be worried about it. So right now they're basically just looking for Transformers and big old Transformers guns that are left around. Recently we became aware of a new incident. You can see Optimus Prime right there on the screen. That's not the one you want to shoot, guys. And cuts to a double page spread where we see Duke on one side of the screen and Destro on the other, and basically this is the mission. There are sightings of our robot enemies in the Pacific, some kind of massive crash. A large section of their technology was recovered, and a shard of it is being transported to a secure lab in Colorado to be studied. However, there's been a series of break-ins at weapons and weapons and advanced technology facilities, including Mars Industries. We're concerned someone is making a play at the same kind of advanced weapons we're out to stop. Cut to Destro. Because of our new technology, we can track traces of Energon, which has led us to a lab in Colorado. Support Mercer and his Vipers. Allow them to acquire the technology and get out as quickly as you can. Two forces, both working for the Energon source. I don't know if this is referenced in the Transformers book, but I would be led to believe, based on the fact that other events do tie into this, that this is at the very least referenced in the book and might actually be an incident. This actually might be the arc, like the Transformers big base. But I don't know it well enough to name it when I see it. I just know it's obviously a very huge piece of technology. I guess it could be a very big Transformer. So, both sides, after one thing, the lab in Colorado that has extracted a unique shard of Energon technology. Cobra Commander and Destro have a short communication before the mission starts, and Cobra Commander, again, kind of establishes that he's not the same Cobra Commander we've seen in other iterations before. Kill everyone, there but one. Leave a witness to spread the word of our glory. Let them fear the name Cobra. Which is very cool. Joe team is here in Colorado. You can see the artifact piece that they're wanting to hold on to is encased in glass. Baroness is immediately upset that they've been stuck with babysitting duty, and the rest of the team feels the same way. They've really gone through considerable efforts to make sure that this star logo is everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can find a picture of a Joe where that star logo is not really shining through. They've owned it. It's been a very strong classified logo for them, and I guess that might have even been a mandatory requirement of the licensing deal. I don't know how much power Hasbro has over the comic, if like they did in the olden days, but I could see them doing something like that. This is another really great scene where Stalker's like, you can go in any time you want, Baroness. I'd rather not be on the same team as a war criminal anyway. And then Baroness fires back in some foreign language that I don't have a translator for, but can kind of get to the gist of it. And then Stalker turns back and says, oh yeah, and responds in the exact same language, which is another great nod to the history of the Joes and how cool they are. All great dialogue. Okay, Duke calms everybody down, and in that exact moment, all the computers start to fizzle. Something's hacking the systems, and then the Cobra logo shows up. Baroness specifically says, nothing I've ever seen before. So this is the first time they're really meeting the enemy. Duke recognizes it, however, and immediately tells everybody to get down. as a Fang approaches and lights up the windows with gunfire, breaking all the windows out, and then we've got Cobra troopers barreling in. They're headed upstairs, and they'll be on them in no time. Rock and Roll's gun is destroyed. Everybody's getting up off the ground. They know they're getting ready to get hit pretty hard. Duke sends them to down with the troopers, and then does his typical, last Boy Scout maneuver and jumps out the window. Great action scene. In comics, sometimes action doesn't carry over unless it's done really well, and this is a really well done shot. You really captured in this one great moment where Duke is flinging himself out the window as the gun of the Fang is firing. One hand on the like brace, whatever you call the like landing gear piece of the Fang. Destro and Cobra Commander are seeing Duke in action, and even Cobra Commander is like, this man is insane. Destro recognizes Duke because in the Duke miniseries, we see Duke infiltrate Mars Industries. He's looking for more information on the Autobots and Decepticons because he thinks Destro's behind it. So Destro is also now learning that Duke did not die in the explosion.
So, on that panel right there,
Yes.
do you think they're looking at the Fang like, man, we really should have put in an actual cockpit? It would have made it a lot harder for him to assault our pilot.
I like to envision that the reason that weakness exists is because there's like a money making. Destro's like, oh, we can make 10 more if we just don't put in a roll bar or whatever. I think that is funny, but it does make for a great scene here where you could just pluck them out and chuck them.
Yeah,
take over.
Got him by the shirt.
The Cobra troopers hit the floor where the Joes are at. They start opening fire right away. Baroness is fighting back. This is a real cool scene where she's like striking out with her legs. She kicks one and she's shooting the other. All good action scenes. Really like
helmets
translate very well from the page. Speaking of yuck, grabbing and chucking, there goes this Cobra trooper as he yanks him out.
It's good to see we don't care about people dying. This is 100%.
Yeah.
People will die.
That's a parachute. He's got one of those pouches has a parachute in it. Yeah.
There's a pretty heavy little parachutes.
There's a pretty heavy firefight that commences between these two. A grenade gets thrown down and lands at Stalker's feet. It goes off and they're basically down for the count. Mercer moves in his cool like Viper Elite outfit, which I really, really like. And they're starting to use the laser guns. Rock and Roll says, what kind of guns are those? And Baroness is like, lasers? So they're taking cover behind that, and they're basically like outmatched. They've been flanked, they've been overrun, they're at gunpoint. Mercer is like, if you want to gift wrap that for us, that would be just fine. Mercer is a great, we don't see Mercer. We've never really seen Mercer as a Viper. We only know Mercer as the guy that used to be a Cobra. So seeing this part of him where he is the Cobra, much less actually in conflict with G.I. Joe, is very interesting and paints the continuity in a different light. I don't think the Joes would get along with Mercer as well if they'd actually been in individual conflicts with him.
So, this is a weird pull. Did you ever play the video game Gears of War?
Sure.
The Gears of War 3 character Clayton Carmine is what this version of Mercer reminds me of, especially in that bottom panel. Because he's a Gears of War character with he's got a helmet and he's just got his sleeves all off. I love this design of Mercer because it's like he's wearing the helmet just to wear it. He doesn't care about safety. He's still rocking out the suns out, guns out, but he looks intimidating, and I love that.
I love this too. I would like to see this version of Mercer in just about any scale. I like the idea of using Mercer as a not yet turned character, just like that's not really been explored much. There's tons and tons and tons of Joes, and while I do think the idea of a Cobra that converted to Joes is an awesome plot idea, there's so few individual Cobras that really stand out. Like, it doesn't hurt me to give him back, basically.
Yeah. Especially when we're getting Baroness on the other side, which is a different, unique way to do it.
A lot of team switching going on. Rock and Roll's not going to stand for that. He hits Mercer in the back of the head with his very large gun, tries to create a distraction, takes on all the Vipers all at once. Mercer lands a punch and just says, "You had to make this complicated. If they get away, you'll have to deal with that psycho commander." Grabs Clutch by the scuff of his shirt. Rock and Roll's, even though he's like very, very badly bloodied, he's like, "You ain't getting that machine." starts to make the run to create the distraction. Says, "Don't worry, Duke. I've been shot before. I can handle a light show." Well, maybe not, old buddy. 'Cause
Yikes.
This final panel clearly shows many shots going through. And that's the end.
I don't like seeing that. That is heartbreaking.
So,
Yikes.
yeah, we got just a little bit of time left at the end. Let's just talk shop a little bit. Do we think that rock and roll's really dead, or are they going to use this as a way to put maybe the Energon affects humans differently, like, or maybe it'll change his body somehow. I'm not. It's certainly not impossible he's going to die. We've already seen them play pretty loose and freely with throwing people out of fangs.
Yeah.
And
plus, they have continuity that's already changed. They're showing they're not beholden to anything that's come before. Like,
yeah,
just because we know that Mercer becomes a Joe doesn't mean that he's going to become a Joe. Because if he's now killed rock and roll, it makes the whole likelihood of him becoming a Joe a lot less likely.
yeah. I mean, he doesn't directly pull the trigger, but I get your meaning. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that he's going to flip over. There's no guarantee the Baroness will ever be a villain.
Yeah.
It seems so very likely. The character that they have called Chameleon, who is in the Destro miniseries, she is hired by Tomex and Zaymont to kill Destro, and in a weird turn of fate, they kind of fall in love a little bit, and because she fails to assassinate him at the end of that run, and then she starts to work for him at the end of that, which makes a lot of sense. But in the let me see if I can give you the abridged version of Chameleon. So in the Big Lots eras, which is probably like the late 90s, this is after the vintage line is over. It's one of the first times they're bringing G.I. Joe vintage toys back, and they make 2-packs of everybody. One of the 2-packs they make is probably Cobra Commander and a Baroness, but they can't call her the Baroness anymore because they lost all their copyrights, something that we see a lot. Nemesis Immortal is another example of them not renewing copyrights and then regretting it later. So they didn't own Baroness anymore. So they decided to name her Chameleon. And the file card for Chameleon says, I don't think she's related to the Baroness. She just happens to be somebody that looks exactly like the Baroness. And she is supposed to be sent in to infiltrate. She's actually a Joe. And she's sent in to infiltrate as the Baroness. Now, that was all we got. That was based on nothing. They're just desperate to put out a Baroness figure, and they didn't have the rights to call her the Baroness. They hadn't yet stumbled on the brilliant idea of calling her Anastasia Baroness de Cobra to get past the copyright. And so we got a new character as a result. And Chameleon has been touched on before, specifically the IDW Cobra run that features Chuckles prominently has a character called Chameleon that is not connected to the Baroness really in any way at all, but she makes her way onto the team, and she's a really cool, useful member. So the fact that Chameleon exists in this context makes me think they plan to swap them at some point. And one person will force the other person out, and they'll swap roles. And I'll show you this also. Let me find my covers.
Anticipation.
Somebody clearly was like, "This, make sure this happens because it's like a defining part." Yeah, here we go. Cover number 1. You see Baroness is beauty mark. Right there. I know it can be hard to see.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. Baroness's beauty mark right there.
Yeah.
Chameleon's beauty mark
Uh-huh.
right there. So they are, and on top of that, Chameleon is not actually a blonde. She wears a blonde wig to throw off her true identity because she's a very high-ranking socialite in the weapons business or whatever. She's actually got brown hair. So the idea that she can blend in or is qualified for disguise work, I feel like that groundwork is there. I feel like that very small piece of evidence is enough to lead me to believe that they have already mapped out this whatever is going to happen with them changing places, them changing sides, something. So I'm interested in all of that for sure. And so let me go back to what you were saying about rock and roll. I think the purpose of this, I do think rock and roll probably really is dead, which is a bummer. Or at the very least, he's going to be off the page, and we won't know that he survived for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think the whole point of that panel was to say they shot the lasers in the cartoons and nobody ever got hit. This ain't the cartoon. We're killing somebody right off the bat. Would be my guess, is that they want to be like, this ain't your kids or your father's. Well, this ain't my G.I. Joe.
Yeah. Just because we shot lasers doesn't mean the lasers have no consequence. These are different lasers.
I feel pretty strongly that's what they were leaning into.
That's fair.
As a premiere book, despite having the groundwork, my overall thought was that it was very good. You get a lot of essential groundwork that is necessary for a number one issue. Still had time to squeeze in a little bit of building some hints about what's to come. And then we got a conflict also, and a death in the first issue. So I am very interested in seeing where, this book's going to be a big hit. I'm always going to be a big fan of Larry's run. I'm going to read Real American Hero until the day I die, or it stops getting published. But this is an exciting look at, a different take. I think I'm now, for sure more than ever, but I think that the idea that two separate G.I. Joe mythologies running simultaneously is sustainable is the way to go. It's something we saw a lot in the IDW world, where Larry was right. They let Larry pick the book back up after they'd already written a ton of stuff, brand new stuff. And then they both kind of ran side by side and did their own thing and diverged in significantly different ways. And I love that. I'm always challenging myself to make everything work in my Joe-verse. So if somebody gets like the new guy, hang on, show you. I'll show you. I made, or have started making, a chameleon already. And it's mostly, I'm not going to sweat the small details. I don't have a painter's hand. I try to make my customs with as little actual customizing as possible, because I want to play with them, because I like to pose them and stuff, and I don't want to have to worry about that. Look, I will paint if I have to, but I try to keep it to a minimum. And so again, this is not like a work of art, but it is a pretty passable custom of a brand new character that I will try to shoehorn into my personal universe using the established characters I have here, because that's how I've been doing it my whole life. When we get back into the movie, I'll talk a lot about how the movie to me was the first thing that was like, you have to choose a side. It's either this or this. And I said, no, I'm going to figure out a way to make it all work. if I have to rewrite them both to make it merge. And that's what I've been doing my whole life. It's how my whole Joe-verse is built. It's built around getting every idea all in it all at once. So anything Joe's. TM.
That's where the name came from. He said the thing.
Jaren, do you have any last thoughts on the G.I. Joe #1? Anything we didn't talk about? I know I haven't read all the minis, so if you have any questions.
Yeah. So that makes sense, because I saw that cover of Chameleon in our local comic shop, because they had variant covers. It was weird. They had multiple different ones. I was shocked, but I was like, I don't know who this is. But of course, Destro is the only one that I haven't read at all. Like, I've read some of the Scarlet. I haven't read any of the. I don't know why I didn't pick it up. I have them. I just haven't read them. I think it's because I had a bunch of DC stuff coming in, so I got overstimulated on comics. But I like that. It is. I really like the way this is jumping on, and to me, this makes me want to build more of my universe, because I like what they're doing with this. They're giving me something new. Oh, hey, you don't have to do everything the same way. You can treat it, this universe is different. It doesn't have to be beholden to the things that came before or what's going on, because now we have literally two different continuities going on, and if you like them both, great. And if you only like one, that's still fine. But they're both there for everybody. And I really do. I love the entirety, except for Transformers, of the Energon Universe. And not against Transformers, I just haven't read it. I'm sure it's fantastic. It's just, I'm like, okay, I'm already reading enough books, and I can't also get the Transformers. But I still love Void Rivals. I'm excited to see how that all works together. I love the characters. I need those characters of Void Rivals in action figure form. So,
I bet that's going to be tough. I bet Kirkman is not going to just let them do it. Maybe in the same scale, but I don't think he's going to just let Hasbro make the figures. But I do think
they looked like they were designed to be action figures, though, for real. Like the way the characters designed, I'm like, okay, I see
totally
what you're doing here. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There are some weird licensing things, but I would love, like you said, a whole Energon Universe line. Like, give me that other rock and roll, may he rest in peace, with like the more armored bits. Give me with the tattoos.
Give me a rock and roll with a bunch of holes in them. Swiss cheese.
Maybe that's what it was. It was actually just laser tattoo removal for you.
Ah, well, I did need it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much all of that. I do hope that this continues to like snowball, because it's been a huge, big, very popular, like lots of accolades, and rightfully so. It is complicated to write a shared universe. They are doing it with multiple people on multiple titles all running simultaneously. There is not a ton of Void Rivals stuff that is relative to what's happening in this book right now, but you can see that will be changing. Pathona is recently kind of breached over into the Void Rivals universe just very recently.
Yep.
And so we'll see how all that ties together. I can only assume on a long enough timeline, eventually the two characters from Void Rivals will meet an actual G.I. Joe. It's just the Transformers universe is so much more inclined to their world that it makes sense that they kind of are button heads with them too.
First.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how that develops. And all the books are doing extremely well. Some of the best like Hasbro owned comic stuff we've seen in a very, very long time. And I'm also very glad that Larry is able to continue doing his book, which I think is also doing very well. And yes, like you said, there's two different types of books, and hopefully at least one of the two is for you. But they're both great reads. I know people have I can see people have issues with both of these, and I understand them, right? People have been kind of picking on Larry for a while now because his writing is it's not off the rails, but he does a lot of stuff that doesn't seem to stick with the majority, which is his right. He's the writer. He can do whatever he wants. And that universe is hard to juggle as well. He said for every person that writes in and says, stop using ninjas, and the same amount of letters come in to say use the ninjas more. So I can understand how that's difficult. And the Energon Universe stuff is very, very sci-fi fantasy based, and that turns off a lot of hardcore G.I. Joe collectors that like to keep it grounded. We've said, when we talked about the movie, I talked about what a big flop it was. Like it didn't get a theatrical release. Most fans didn't like it. Kind of bounced off of them and changed everything. So some people have really held on to that hostility over the years, and they're not willing to give this a shot either. But it's absolutely worth a read. But I mean, if you can't get past it, you can't get past it. Can't all be big globulous buddies. The way that they're writing Nemesis and Forcer alone, I feel like is some of the best use of his character of all time. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back in the very near future. We've been working on our Dragonfly coverage. It's something of an undertaking, but we'll be wrapping that up soon. I can't wait to talk about that with you guys. It's one of the biggest toys I've ever bought in my life, probably, and also very rare for Jaren and I to both get something of this size at the same time. So we've got that coming in the near future, and we've got a bunch of other stuff. We're always working on something new. I got a ton of toys to talk about. We'll have to slot that in. I've been really picking up a lot of these Joy Toy Hiya G.I. Joes that they've been pumping out. I want to get caught up on that and some other stuff. So yeah. Lots of stuff on the horizon, essentially. And you can reach out to us with thoughts on this comic, or even Larry's A Real American Hero run, Void Rivals, stuff that we are missing in the Transformers comic. Whatever your thoughts are, we're interested in it. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky now at Anything Joe's Pod, and we would love to hear from you. You can also reach out to our email at anythingjoespod or anythingjoespodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for watching, and we look forward to talking to you again in just 2 short weeks, where anything's available for discussion here on Anything Joe.
Greg and Jaren, they're the ones you know, exploring the world where heroes go. From cartoons to comics, toys galore, to the Energon Universe, they'll explore anything Joe's for adventure soar. Toys, comics, cartoons, and much more. With Greg and Jaren leading the way in